So Tennessee Titans, obviously there's talk with these first three picks and pick number 6 with the Vegas Raiders of who's going to be going after a quarterback. Titans, Browns, Giants all have a need for quarterback. And obviously there's a lot of link between the Raiders and Shedeur Sanders and their need for a quarterback. And here with the Titans, they bring in Borgonzi as their new GM, and he's made statements about how we need to not just focus on quarterback. We need to look at best player available. That's brought a lot of people to thinking like this is considered a weaker quarterback class. And
generational talent is what he said. He would
right,
not pass up a generational talent.
right. And I'm not 100% convinced that there is a generational talent in this draft class. I think that there's a decent amount of blue chippers, which are guys that are considered to be, all Pro Bowl type players year in and year out, and that the generational talent you're talking about, those legendary guys who are almost a lock for Hall of Fame. I'm not sure that you have a generational talent in this draft. Like I said, there are blue chippers in here. If there's one person that gets pointed to all the time as the potential generational guy, it's Travis Hunter, right? Because he's that kind of positionless player, both a defensive back and a wide receiver. But you don't know which he is, and you don't know if he's like the elite of the elite at either of those things. Either way, I think that Tennessee is going to end up going quarterback at this position. Like with Callahan there, Levis isn't the answer. Levis wasn't a guy that he drafted or brought in. It wasn't a guy that the new GM there brought in. They have the opportunity to completely wipe the slate clean. It's not like they're foregoing a first round pick. Levis was taken in the second, and he has some tools there that you still like that you could continue to develop as a backup. And if you're able to get something out of him, maybe you trade him in a year or something like that to a desperate team. Either way, they do need to figure out the quarterback position. It's the most important position on the football team. Now the question is, does it come down to Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, right? So Cam Ward, more toolsy, more of the mobile threat quarterback. He's looked better every single year that he's played in college. A lot of big plays. Or Shedeur Sanders, who seems like the higher floor type of player, but the biggest thing with him is that he seems to take a lot of sacks. He holds onto the ball really long. I've heard some interesting theories about how it might be stat padding that was going there, which is a very highfalutin way to think about how he played his college career, that he would hold on to the ball a lot more and take those sacks rather than throw balls away, because then that counts as an incompletion. Do you give any credence to that at all with Shedeur?
No. I don't. I mean, I think there are times he holds on to the ball to try to make a play, which I'd like to see him not do. But do I think he's doing it to pad his stats? No. I mean, that's one of the most asinine things I've ever heard.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the same ilk with my thought process. Like maybe Dion is having some like gigabrain thought process when he's training him, being like, "Hey, just go ahead and take the sack. I'd rather you do that." But that doesn't make sense for the actual football team.
Yeah.
Dion's coaching a football team, and that's something that they need to coach out of him, is how long he holds onto the ball. I do absolutely agree that he has the higher floor of these guys. Cam Ward, I think, could be a special player if put in the right situation. I don't know if the Titans is that right situation. We don't know if Callahan is necessarily good at developing a quarterback. The comments that he's made about Shedeur in relation to Joe Burrow, though, and excuse me, obviously Callahan coming from that Bengals organization working with Joe Burrow, I think that he has an idea of what type of quarterback that he wants. He hasn't had the same sort of toolsy quarterback before as he did with Cam Ward. One could say that Will Levis is that toolsy type of guy with a big ass arm and he can run a little bit, and that didn't necessarily work out. I think that he's going to lean more towards Shedeur. So I'm going Shedeur Sanders in this spot. I think that high floor for the Titans, coupled with they already have a pretty solid offensive line there. They've got a Calvin Ridley type there. Who knows if they're going to bring back Westbrook Akine or not as another wide receiving option, but they want to solidify one side of the ball. I think they have a lot more holes on the defensive side of the ball, but they've got some pieces on offense already. Let's go ahead and lean into the offense and then work on defense later in this draft, free agency, and in years future. But Shedeur Sanders going number 1 overall, exactly what Dion wants and Shedeur wants to the Tennessee Titans.
Okay, so they both want him to go first for sure. I think that I don't know that this will happen. Because I agree with you. I think Shedeur has the higher floor, lower ceiling. Cam Ward has the higher ceiling because he's a toolsy guy. There are some holes in Cam's game that you worry about the accuracy. I mean, we have looked at guys who are toolsy, who have maybe not the best ball placement, and they struggle at this level. Uh, I mean, Jordan Love is a great example of that. Where he could go absolutely gangbusters, but it's not guaranteed to happen every week. That's kind of more where I find Cam Ward. Shedeur is steady Eddie, but it feels like it's going to be high. I'm not sure if everybody else is on. Executives are going to be in the same mindset. And it is interesting that the comments from the GM that come out and say, "Hey, you know what? We are not going to pass up an opportunity to take a generational guy if the ceiling is not as high for Shedeur." I would be interesting. It would be interesting to see this move. It changes the way I'm going to make my next pick, though.
Yeah, look, a part of the thought process here is that Callahan might be on a short leash. Bergonzi, I don't know how long his leash is necessarily going to be, but when you look at bringing in one particular player, because if they don't take Shedeur here, they go a different route, non-quarterback. You're looking at probably Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
Is Abdul Carter going to, how many more wins per year is he going to provide you? How many more wins is Travis Hunter going to provide you per year?
Mm-hmm.
Less than one, maybe, but bringing in a quarterback that is competent enough to run an offense better than Will Levis, which I
Will
think
Levis cost
Shedeur
you at least
Sanders,
2 last year.
and I think Shedeur Sanders has the ability to run an offense well, maybe not again at that, top 15 level, but he right around that 15 mark in his first year. He probably brings you in a couple more wins, and that might be the sort of statistic on a piece of paper that you can go to your owner and say, look, we are making progress where in years past we haven't had that. That's enough to keep your job. And I think that that's going to be a factor for a lot of these teams picking in the top 3 here, top 4.
Whew, all right, yeah. So that puts me, the Browns, on the clock with a guy that I didn't think was going to be there. I thought Cam Ward was going 1 in this draft. And the times that I have run where Shedeur goes first, my immediate thought is I have to take Cam. And I like Shedeur more than I like Cam. I like Shedeur because he's accurate. He is on time, in rhythm type thrower. And that more fits the Stefanski style of offense. That's kind of his bread and butter. But when you have a guy that has this high upside, like really high upside, everybody thinks, and you have been an absolute quarterback hell recently, you're almost forced into doing this. Now, I think that there is a lot of talents in other places. But like you said, how many wins does Travis Hunter bring to Cleveland Browns? And what position does he play? Is he playing wide receiver? Because if that's the case, who the fuck's throwing him the ball? And that, in my opinion, that's where Travis should play. It's mostly at wide receiver and some corner, because you can get the ball in his hands more and have him affect the game in a bigger sense on the offensive side of the ball. Abdul Carter, that's a great piece. Opposite Myles Garrett, it's fantastic. And if for some reason Myles Garrett leaves, you have Abdul Carter to kind of fill in and take his place. But with Cam Ward and the potential that he has, I can't not take him here.
You thinking that
Exactly what will happen if anybody but Cam Ward goes first in the draft. I think Cam Ward will go to the Browns.
you think that means that you guys would be punting on any possible opportunity next year at looking at a Manning or something like that in a much better quarterback draft?
It will very
Is
much
this a
depend on if
desperation?
Cam sees the field.
Is this a desperation move then for your head coach GM combo?
Yeah, but aren't they kind of in that spot anyways with the way the Deshaun Watson contract worked out and the way the whole roster is now constructed? They kind of have to throw a Hail Mary. And this is their best chance at that Hail Mary. It's going to buy them some time. This really uber talented quarterback that needs some grooming, you'll get a couple of years with that. But if you bring in a Shedeur Sanders, you know the ceiling's only so high. What can you get out of him pretty quickly because his floor is already much higher? That puts a lot more pressure on Berry and Stefanski in my opinion. So if I'm the Browns and Cam Ward's on the board at 2, they're gonna take him. They have to take him.
All righty. So that's your pick, Cam Ward?
Cam Ward.
All righty. Well, that makes my pick with the Giants a little bit more difficult because obviously the hope there would be that Cam Ward falls here. Being the more toolsy guy, you have Dable, who has dealt with a toolsy quarterback who had some accuracy concerns and was able to work that out. I think that's a selling point for Dable is he could get a guy like a Cam Ward in and say, I can build this guy. I did with Josh Allen. It's not going to be immediate. It's not going to be tomorrow, but this is someone that I can work with a little bit more. And now you have those top 2 quarterbacks off the board.